Welcome back to my T206 Journey. If you missed the first video, I encourage you to go back and check it out. In that video, it's a bit of an intro as to how I got into the set, why I believe it is the most exciting set in sports cards to collect, a brief history about the T206 collection, and then what got me hooked on it. My very first card, that would be the Tris Speaker. So in this second video, I'm going to discuss how I went from a couple random T206 cards and a superficial understanding of the set to over 400 of the 520 cards and a growing knowledge in a super short time. And so again, I am in no way an expert, but rather an enthusiast with a bit of an addictive personality and a desire to learn. So in that first video, you're going to find some resources. The Monster Podcast, a really good book called the T206 Players and Their Stories collection, or the T206 collection book. I encourage you to pick that up. I'm going to be reading from a few of the players' bios, and it's just makes the set so much more vibrant. So in the fall of 2019, I picked up my first card. That was the Tris Speaker I showed in the last video, and I was hooked. I began to search out different websites and books and online communities to not only buy cards, but hopefully to meet others and really learn from the collective knowledge of any collector who would really share it. So some were closed off and I didn't get much information, but most people I had met were really helpful and encouraging and forthcoming with not only their opinions, but their expertise. And boy, are there a lot of opinions on how to collect this set. I knew I could buy these cards on eBay, as well as online auction houses and various different hobby websites, local card stores that put their stuff up online. There's a bunch of different ones out there, but I have found the most success in a few places. I'm going to share with you some of my secrets, and really they're not really secrets, but my experiences. A website called Net54, N-E-T, and the number is 54.com, and Facebook groups. Now, you have to understand, eBay will provide you a greater level of protection when buying cards online, but the prices are much higher, and you have kind of time your bidding just right, and eBay is a terrible place to make connections. They really don't want you meeting or talking to people outside of eBay, and not always the best platform to have messages back and forth anyway. So don't just collect the set to own the cardboard. Get to know the history and collect alongside other people. Like, the community is really awesome. So my number one tip to collecting this set when it comes to where to buy cards and where to meet people would be Facebook. If you're not on Facebook, I'd say make an account just for this. Actually, I know quite a few collectors who only have Facebook accounts for the baseball card groups that they're in. And don't just join the buy, sell, trade groups, but join some of the collectors groups, because you want to be in one where people are actually talking about collecting and not just buying and selling. You want to expand your knowledge and not just drain your bank account. But there are a plethora of baseball card Facebook groups. I encourage you to join a couple, especially the large ones. One of the keywords or key phrases is pre-war when it comes to T206. So if you're getting into this, find some groups that say pre-war. Another one is tobacco cards. These were in cigarette packs and polar bear, loose scrap tobacco pouches. And so I made a post originally that was, hey, I'm starting to collect T206 and looking to meet some other people, learn a little bit, perhaps buy a couple things. I would shy away from posting things like, I've got money to burn, who's selling T206. I have posted that before, and you're going to attract the sharks, the collectors, and the flippers, which isn't terrible, if it's a card that you need, but it's also not great. My philosophy is to meet other people, make connections, and hopefully give back to the community as much as you take. So when I first started collecting, I was all into it. I was trying to get the best deals possible. And really, I learned that if I had a card that somebody needed and I could give it to them at a good price, then I would be able to hopefully get the same back in return. And I've had a couple people point me in the direction or point people to me who were selling something that I needed. So I'll talk about that in a little bit. But ask people why they started collecting and how they collect the set. You will learn a ton about the community that way, and you'll ask them like, hey, do you collect one specific team? Are you all into only PSA or SGC at a certain number? Some people collect mainly just one player. Like for me, I am at 517 of the 520 cards. There's 3 cards left, and I'm kind of taking my time to savor them, make sure I get the right ones. But I have really just love this portrait. So this is 3-finger Mordecai Brown, and he got his nickname 3 Fingers because he lost 2 parts of his finger when he was a kid in a farming machinery accident. So a farming machine accident, and that just allowed him to throw different pitches. So known for a nasty curveball, he threw 20 or more games 6 years in a row from 1906 until 1911. Absolutely dominant pitcher. He was part of the Cubs 1907 and 1908 World Series championships. And I'm getting a lot of this information from that book, the T206 collection, which I will have a link to buy it from Amazon in the description below. So make sure you buy that, support the community. He had a 239 win and 130 loss record, 1,375 strikeouts, which at that time was an outstanding achievement, and he was elected to the Hall of Fame in 1949. So for me, there are 11 different backs for Mordecai Brown for this specific portrait. So he has 3 different subjects. He has a throwing with Cubs across the chest. He has the same throwing picture, but Chicago going up and down kind of on the buttons. And then he has this just unbelievable portrait. I love that hairstyle and the blue and the red and the way that it pops on there. So some people out there just collect the portraits. I would lean that way as well because it's just classic Americana from that time period. They're kind of looking off into the middle distance and not making eye contact with the camera. You get that dead eye for the dead ball era. So I'm going to show a couple. There are 11 different backs, I think I mentioned, for him. A couple Piedmonts, a couple Sweet Caporels, a couple Sovereigns, a Prince of Wales, an Old Mill, and a Hindu. So this right here is a Sweet Cap. Flip around on the back. There's different factories. Let's see if I can pull it close right here. So at the very bottom, it says 150 subjects. So this was the first set. And factory 30. So for a Sweet Caporel, for this portrait, there is a factory 25 and a factory 30. And so the factory 30s are a little easier to find. The factory 25s are a little more difficult. So I'll switch this one out right here, and we'll go to probably the most common one. The 2 most common ones to find are the Piedmont 150s and 350s. So I'm finding this information from online population reports, which aren't incredibly reliable, but they give you a frame. So for example, PSA and SGC are the 2 big grading card companies, as well as Beckett, but you got to be a member to get Beckett's population report. And it's essentially telling you approximately how many have been graded in the past. Sometimes people crack them open. Sometimes people get them reholdered with different companies. It's not accurate data by any stretch, but it's decent. So this is an ungraded one. I probably won't get it graded because it's pretty rough up top, and I just like to have it in the binder. I took it out just for this and put it in a good holder so it would stand up well. But this is one of those 150, and it's a factory 25. So for the Piedmonts, Piedmont 150 and 350, they only come in 25 to my knowledge. So I have the Piedmont 150. Oops. I have, you already saw the Sweet Cap 150 factory 30. I have the Sweet Cap 350 factory 30. And so what I'm showing you here is a back run, essentially, that I am attempting to collect all the backs. This one is a funny one, I think, because there's a piece of tape in there. Like, there's a piece of tape in the holder, in the slab, which you peel the tape off, you lose some paper, it probably most likely gets a 1. You leave the paper on and you roll the dice, and you get a 2. But the corners on this one are really nice. I think it's only because the paper, and it's got a big old crease right along his forehead right there. But so that's my third one. This would be an upgrade to that sweet cap. I believe this is a 350/30. Yeah, this is the 350/30. So I have two of those, but this is an upgrade because it is a 3 SGC, which I prefer their holders better. I just like them because of the black insert. I think it just makes the cards pop a little bit better. I don't like that they're loose inside though, so if you can see, the cards move a little bit. I don't really love that, but. And then this is the big dog for me so far. I just picked this up recently on eBay. This looks like the same card, but on the back it is a more difficult one. I'd probably say like, the second hardest tier to get. This is a Sovereign 150 subjects. So there are 2 Piedmonts, there are 4 sweet caps, 150/30, 150/25, 350/30, and 350/25. And then there's Sovereign 150 subjects and Sovereign 350 subjects. They're about the same populations. Who knows what they actually are out there. That's just the graded cards. That's not saying what people have in their binders, what somebody has in a safe deposit box, stuff that isn't graded. And so I plan to get this one graded. A guy in one of my groups said it could either be trimmed, which means it's cut along the edges, which I don't think it is, or it could be a 1, 2, or 3. So we'll see what it comes back as, but I got a pretty good deal on it. I'll talk about that in number 4, the 4th tip, which is the last one. And then actually, I'm just going to leave you in here because you're the new one. And then the most difficult ones to find are the Hindu back, the Old Mill, and the Prince of Wales, which is sometimes you'll see it as EPDG. So anyway, you can collect in a lot of different ways. I have the whole set, almost the whole set, as well as just focusing on this player's back run. So maybe that's some inspiration for you as an intermediate collector, or I'm hoping to do a video on the different ways to collect the set in the future. Somebody suggested that, as well as a back run video. Probably get to both those. So now I have learned things from other wiser, more experienced collectors, and along the way making friends and acquaintances, and came across 2 people in these Facebook groups. So here's the big tip. We're 13 minutes in, so if you're still listening, then you're getting the real inside scoop. So the way I went from having a handful of cards to having over 600 cards, T206, 404 unique commons, Southern Leaguers, and Hall of Famers, was that I bought 2 collections. I bought 2 entire collections. I made a post and somebody reached out and said they were selling, and another one was somebody that I had known and talked to a little bit, said I know somebody who might be selling, here's their information. And so making connections led me to both of them. And when you're dealing with hundreds of cards over the internet, you want to have somebody to vouch for somebody else, have some reputation involved. So number 1, here are some reasons that this was a huge help for me, buying cards within Facebook groups. So, and especially buying multi-card lots. So number 1, buying cards individually on eBay or other places can get really expensive. So eBay is putting tax in there, and a couple dollars shipping for each card, as well as bidding against other people, is going to really increase the cost of collecting. So if you can buy person to person, you are able to negotiate a little bit, maybe get a discount on a multi-card lot, or pick up a huge collection. So I'm going to show you some cards I got in one of my collections in a little bit. Number 2, I was able to get a decent deal per card because I was buying an entire collection. So I want you to hear me out. I talked to tons of people, I got to know them, and I stumbled upon 2 people who are looking to be done with this daunting task of collecting the monster, as it's known. And so these are collecting 520 100-year-old pieces of cardboard. It is, you know, it can get really draining on the pocketbook and the wallet and the bank account. So I didn't go into these groups hunting for collections to buy, but rather because, you know, I believed I was trying to learn and meet other people. You know, others recommended me. Number 3, I was able to learn quicker on a larger scale. Acquiring that many cards, I sat down and I just went down this spiral rabbit hole for a few months, and I was consumed. And in that time I learned a ton, and I was talking, you know, like stuff that people take 5 and 10 years to learn. I was able to gather in a couple months because I was spending the time. I got the resources, I was talking to people, and I had a ton of cards in front of me to learn and catalog. And so anyway, a couple highlights from those collections. Get started right here. The first one, gonna start out with a big one here. Kind of a big one to me, at least. This is a Southern Leaguer. His name is Perry Lippe. I butcher these names all the time. So when it comes to the Southern Leaguers, they tend to be more rare because there was only a few backs, typically a Piedmont, an Old Mill, and then occasionally, or hard to find, Hindu. So this is a Hindu. Those population reports I was telling you about, there are 9 PSAs that are reported. There are 12 SGCs. So there's probably somewhere between 30 and 100 maybe graded ones out there. Tons are probably in people's binders and ripped up. And so I got this as a raw card. So it was ungraded, and it was in, you know, a card holder. It's got some paper loss, and so if you're ever buying cards online, you see the initials PL. That often means paper loss, which is that this card was probably glued into a binder or glued onto like a page. So when it was ripped out of there, it took some paper off of it, which will usually get you an authentic, like can't be given a number, or it'll give you, the grading companies will give you a 1, sometimes maybe 1.5, but I think you usually just get a 1. So this is a really awesome card. When I do my video on the different backs, this is really the only Hindu that I have. So I believe that there's a red Hindus. Those can be even more rare, or they are more rare. Next one, this is Bobby Wallace. So this is I got this, it was already graded. And so Bobby Wallace is, you know, arguably one of the best shortstops, I believe. I test myself. Yeah, so one of the first great defensive shortstops. I'm reading from the T206 collection book, and perhaps the first player to field his way into the Hall of Fame. He redefined infield play by refining the process of fielding and throwing a grounder, diminishing the role of the infield hit in the early games. In 1902, after the AL Browns lured him away from the Cardinals for a 5-year contract worth, at that time, a staggering $32,000. So this is just a beautiful card, really nice portrait if you're somebody who's into those portraits. And I'll show you the back real quick, which is a Piedmont 150/25, so pretty common. Next card we're going to go to is another, I'm showing you a lot of portraits in a row, maybe just because I love them, but Joe Tinker. This is a really nice 1. It's got a crease down the middle, and I believe on the back it's got some paper loss, kind of like what I was talking about before, but this came graded in that collection. So with Tinker, probably don't have to tell many of you about him, but he was the left side of that middle infield, Tinker, Evers, Chance. And something that was really interesting as I was rereading his bio in the T206 collection is that Tinkers, Evers, and Chance, despite their success on the field, Tinker and Johnny Evers actually did not speak for decades, beginning with an on-field fight over cab fare in 1905. Tinker stole home twice in one game in 1910 and helped the Cubs to 4 World Series, eventually becoming their manager. So, you know, one of the greatest defensive Hall of Famers of all time. Career batting average was 262. Ha, no way, 262. So great card. Got that in one of the collections. Gonna hop over to an interesting card. This is what some people call a ghost image. It's a very slight one. There's some really cool and unique things out there as you go down the rabbit hole of the T206 collection. Pull it a little bit closer. You can see that there is essentially two images side by side, and they overlap. So you can see his ear twice. You can see the outline of his arm, and it goes off the picture into the white border there. So just a cool card, and picked it up in a binder. So it was in one of the collections. I don't know if it's worth anything more, but just a fun card. We have next a really, I think, unique common player. And I know some people are going to say it's not common, but Doc Adkins. The Baltimore set seems to be a little bit more difficult to find. I think people from Baltimore are just hardcore fans. Maybe they were made less. If you know the reason, please let me know. One of the folklores that I've heard is somebody is hoarding these Doc Adkins. This was in a binder page, and in that binder I got the cards for like an average of $15. So this card's probably worth, I don't know, maybe around $100, maybe plus or minus. And so that was a really cool find. When I bought the binder, I didn't even know what I was buying. I knew that there was a couple like Elite 11s out there. It's a 350/25 back, so not a super rare one, but still a really cool card. And as I was going through, I was like, oh, I have Doc Adkins. And somebody that I was talking to was like, oh, here's some more difficult random cards to find, you know, Titus and etc. But the Atkins one was a surprise. And I was like, oh, I already got that, and I didn't pay much for him. Here's another cool player. This is Luther Taylor, played for Buffalo. And the reason I think he's cool is he got the nickname Dummy. That was an appropriate, at the time, it isn't now, but appropriate name for somebody who was deaf. And he was one of the first players in baseball with a disability. So he was a pretty good pitcher. He's not a Hall of Famer, but he played for the New York Giants as well as the Cleveland Broncos. And later on in his life, played some minor league baseball for teams like Buffalo. He was inducted into the Kansas Baseball Hall of Fame in 2006. So quite a few years after he passed away in 1958. But cool card. Another one of those kind of mid-range commons that people like to collect just because of the story behind him. Out of respect for Taylor, his Giants teammates learned sign language, and they used the signs in-game until opposing teams figured out what they were doing. So kind of a cool piece of history there. And I believe I got one more card in the collection side. I do, just for fun. Shag. People like his hair. That's it. I don't know. This is one of those Southern Leaguers, and it is in an old mill back, which tend to be more sought after than the Piedmonts. But for this player right here, pretty much everyone is always looking for him. Let me see if I can flip over to some Southern Leaguers. It won't take too long. Some homework. Look them up on your own. So just a fun card there. All right. So anyway, just to finish it up, join some Facebook pages, meet some people. Tip number 2, attempt to join the website Net54. There is a bit of a vetting process, but that's a good thing because there are a lot of great collectors on that site. We're going to throw up the Hindu. I would say everyone you would meet on Net54 is also on Facebook. I would say everyone you would meet who collects T206 who's on Facebook is also on Net54, but there are more collectors who don't like or use or even care about Facebook that are on there as well. So Net54 is an old style forum based website, so it's a great place to buy cards and occasionally meet others who collect. We've linked up on email or Facebook after the fact. So here's a couple cards that I've gotten off of Net54. Grab them. This was my very first Ty Cobb. It is beat and well loved, but I got it at a great price. It is a polar bear back, and this is the red portrait, which is the most common Ty Cobb out there. You'll find it quite a bit. But got that polar bear back and that super dirty, chunky polar bear back with like bits of something still on it. So really cool card. Got it for a great deal from somebody who was selling off some cards. So Ty Cobb. A couple cards that I got on there that were raw and ungraded that I got graded. Another one of those Southern Leaguers, Charlie Fritz. I thought this card would have got better than a 1.5. There's some slight paper loss at the bottom that I just didn't think would be that big of a deal, but I'm still learning. So I bought this one on there. The back looks really clean. Nice. And then this one was a nice surprise when it came back. An Ed Regan from New Orleans and fellow player with Charlie Fritz. There, and another one of the Old Mills. So I have all the Southern Leaguers in Old Mill backs. That's just one way I chose to collect the 520 set, is with all the Southern Leaguers in Old Mill. I just like it because, you know, they have the cool backs with Texas and with the South Atlantic and the different league names on the back. So I think that's probably the last card I'm going to show, so I'll leave that up there and then wrap this one up. My number 3 tip is card shows. Simply just get out there and meet some people like in real life. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of baseball and sports memorabilia shows happening every year, and there's probably one within driving distance of you in the next week. So number 1, all those Facebook groups that you join, post up there a question like, hey, what are some good card shows in the blank area? You live in Boston, you live in Chicago, obviously the National, you live in Southern California, wherever it is. And one place that I like to go to, I'll link it below. It's sportscollectordigest.com, and they have a Collecting 101 page and there's a calendar page, and you can go through it. It's updated pretty frequently. And so I've found some sports card shows in my area. It's really good because you can pay in cash, you can negotiate prices, you get to actually see and hold the cards before you buy them, which is, you know, a big factor for many people. If it's not for you, it, you know, I think should be a value. You can see if it's the right fit for your collection. And then last but not least, actually last but least in my opinion, is just good old eBay and auction houses. So though eBay is my least favorite place to buy T206, I have gotten some really great cards there. It takes a little more time, very impersonal. Over the past year, I have been collecting on there, and they have, you know, started putting sales tax on everything, and I'm pretty sure there's shill bidding, people who are bidding things up for other people. So I found success on midday and late night auctions. If you see a card that you want or you need, watch it. Just click that watch button on eBay, set notifications, and just hunt it down. If you see a card you want and it is a buy it now only, and there is no make an offer button, I encourage you to reach out to the seller and just say, hey, I'm looking to pick up this card. Would you consider an offer? They'll either say yes or no, or not answer you. And I found some sellers who've had cards listed for years. One guy said, I've had this card listed for over 5 years and no one's ever reached out. I'm like, oh my gosh, you know, you get the price set super high, in my opinion. No offense. Would you be willing to take this? He said no, but I'd be willing to take that. And so we negotiated and I was able to pick it up. So at the very worst, these eBay sellers will just tell you to buzz off, and you will. And you won't get the card. So that being said, that's all for now. That was a 30-minute video. If you're still watching, thanks for following along. I would love to know what you are collecting. Post it in the comments below. If it's T206, what is your number? Where are you at towards the 520? And how are you collecting the set? if you are collecting something else, I'd love to hear that too. I've been drawn to a couple other pre-war sets, like Old Judge Baseball and the original Allen and Ginter cards. So subscribe, and I plan to continue making videos about this journey.